What's going on, everyone? Data Report here for datareport.info with today's weather discussion for Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. Taking a look at the national hazards map from the National Weather Service, the warnings and advisories, and you can see here we do have some active weather to talk about today. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories are up from the Four Corners region on through to the Great Lakes where there is a winter storm. On the southeast side of the system, there is going to be a severe weather threat today, especially from portions of eastern Texas, Oklahoma, on all the way up through to the Ohio Valley. The system is going to produce severe weather tonight, continuing into tomorrow. So first off, let's take a look at the national satellite loop. As you can see, here's our system here in the Four Corners region. And if you look real closely out ahead of this, you do see some moisture being pumped out of the Gulf of Mexico in through Louisiana, Alabama, all the way up into Tennessee Valley, where temperatures are warming up. Taking a look at the national radar loop, you can see once again Colorado, New Mexico, portions of Utah. Here is our weather system, and you can almost make out on radar in the south the moisture fetch that is coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to help fuel the thunderstorms. Taking a look here at the thunderstorm outlook from the Storm Prediction Center of the National Weather Service, you can see the slight risk which goes from Texas on up into Kentucky, and within that there is an area of enhanced thunderstorm possibility today. So in this enhanced area, you have to be cautious for tornadoes, and as you can see here, they do actually have a 10% chance of tornadoes within any point of 25 miles. There's also a 30% chance within this area of wind, and there's also on the western flank of this, there is a enhanced area of possibility of some hail, with the rest of the area being 15% chance of hail and 5% outside of that. So once again, anyone living in this 10% area, you want to pay particular attention to the tornado potential for today. Outside of that, there is a chance of isolated tornadoes, but not as great as the 10% area. But nonetheless, anyone within these areas could see a tornado today. This threat actually continues tomorrow. And as you can see here, from the Gulf Coast on up into the Ohio Valley, there's a large slight risk area, but within this there is another enhanced area where there could be tornadoes, especially in Mississippi and Alabama. And the greatest threat is within this 10% area, and outside of that there is a 5% chance area with a smaller chance up into the Ohio Valley. Wind threat will also exist tomorrow. There could be some straight line wind damage anywhere in this 30% area, and there's also the risk of hail, especially in Mississippi and Alabama, with any potential supercell thunderstorm. Now here's an experimental product I like to look at, and this is showing the same thing as the SPC, but it's a model forecast instead of a human forecast, and it's showing anywhere within this brown area, there's a 5% chance of a tornado on either side of 25-mile area. And here's what it shows for tomorrow from Tennessee down into, say, Alabama and portions of Mississippi. Taking a look at the simulations from the FV3 computer model, you'll see here, here's the initial moisture that I was talking about that comes up out ahead of the system. Here's the snow back into portions of Kansas and Colorado, and watch what happens as we go into this evening. The thunderstorm threat will really start to pick up any time after 8 or 9 o'clock Central Time tonight. And you can see here, initial thunderstorms start to develop. Some of them could be supercells, and these initial supercells will be the ones that we really have to pay close attention to for potential rotation and tornadoes. But watch what happens as time goes on. A squall line starts to form in Texas and portions of Oklahoma. The initial supercells continue, but they start to merge together and congeal. So anyone in the area of the initial supercells could see some training, and if that happens, there could also be a flood threat. So we have to pay close attention. This does form into a new squall line. The original squall line kind of dies out along the cold front, and maybe even in some cases you could call it a dry line because there's really cold dew points, much drier air behind us. And look what happens. The squall line continues. This is tomorrow morning at 12 so that's between 7 to 9 a.m., depending on where you live. And you can see it starts to come into Ohio Valley. There could be an isolated tornado up in that area, but heavy rainfall and damaging winds would be the greater threat. But any tornado would be just south of this warm front in Kentucky. And further south, there also continues to be a tornado threat, which is going to continue down into Alabama and Mississippi. Because here's the area of low pressure, here's the warm moist air, here's the squall line, so you have to pay attention for the possibility of some tornadoes. And look what happens here. You do have some individual discrete cells tomorrow afternoon that do try to get going, and any one of them could contain rotation. The warm front of this system is going to continue into Pennsylvania and the Northeast. It's going to provide some rain, and then there will actually be a second area of rain that develops along the cold front in the Northeast states, and anywhere from about a half an inch to maybe even isolated amounts of 3/4 of an inch is possible. Extreme northern New England could see some mixy ice and even some snow with this system. Moving on to the longer range outlook and taking a look here behind the system, some colder air moves into the northeast. Generally quiet for the rest of the country until about next week. And then we see a weak system come across the Great Lakes, but watch what happens here in the southwest. Things start to pick up, especially in the northwest where you get some snowy conditions in the mountains, and we could be talking some significant snowfall amounts up there, maybe even multiple feet up into the mountains of Idaho, Oregon, and Washington State. This system eventually comes across the country. Another little system forms here across the Ohio Valley. Fortunately, yes, once again, for you snow lovers, that's rain. But watch what happens here with this bigger system. That really gets going, and there's some discrepancy in the models. I could switch to another model, and it's going to show you a completely different outcome. Look at this here on the Canadian model. It does eventually show the system, but it shows strong high pressure to the north, suppresses it to the south, and creates what's called an overrunning system. So it's pretty far out there. We'll have to watch it. That's next week. And like I said, there's discrepancy. The Europeans just now coming in. We'll have to see what that shows. But one thing is certain here. The 6 to 10 day outlook from the CBC, warm weather is going to continue in the east. Cold weather in the west and northwest, near normal in between. Then the 8 to 14 day outlook, it starts to change a little bit. The above average temperatures kind of get suppressed a little more southeast, below average much of the west, and slightly below average maybe now into the northeast, north of Pennsylvania. That's something we'll have to watch, but again, a lot of that is dependent on what happens with that system middle of next week, which could be a high impact system if it does materialize. Alrighty, that's it for today's weather discussion. We'll have another weather discussion tomorrow, and if you enjoy the content that I do on my channel, whether it be weather updates, pandemic updates, or the stuff that you don't hear much about on the media that I try to get out there and bring awareness to, hit the like and subscribe button down below. I'm Data Report for datareport.info. Have a great afternoon.